Hello friends, this is Sanjay. In this video, we'll talk about individual differences among learners, that is, understanding differences based on diversity of language, caste, gender, community, religion, etc., which happens to be part of the Karnataka TET CDP syllabus for papers 1 and paper 2 as well. In this series, we will cover only those topics which are important from your exam point of view. We will look at what are individual differences, the types and reason for these differences, what is linguistic diversity in India, the caste and the religion diversity in India, and what are the effects of the factors such as gender, religion and caste on learning, and what are the educational implications of such individual differences. We will also look at the difference between equality and equity in addressing these differences in learners. And we will also take a quick look at addressing individual differences among learners. And we will end this video by solving some sample questions from previous question papers. So let's get started. The first question that we will have to answer is, what are these individual differences? If you look at a typical classroom, then all the children are different, because if you look at the physical, mental, social, cognitive or emotional development of the children, they will be at different levels. And each child has a different type of motor ability, different level of achievement, interest, aptitude, self-concepts and confidence. Therefore, all children are different. So that is individual differences, that is the difference between the individuals in your classroom. Next, let us look at the types and the reasons for these individual differences. Individual differences can be classified into two basic types, inter-individual or intra-individual. Inter-individual means the difference between two different individuals. Such as if we compare two children, one child might be good at maths, one child might be good at science. So these are the difference between two different children. Therefore, these are inter-individual. And if we take the same child, the child might be good at singing, but might be bad at drawing. Therefore, there are differences within the same child when it comes to different types of abilities or different creativity. Therefore, intra-individual are the differences within the same person. And where can we find these individual differences? We can find them in the mental abilities, in physical abilities, in creativity, emotional development, social development, thinking or learning style. So we can find differences between all these different types of attributes. These can be differences between two children, or these can be differences within the same child. That is, a child might have very good mental abilities, whereas the same child might have very poor physical abilities. So that is intra-individual. And how do we get these individual differences? What are the reasons behind these individual differences? Some of them can be inherited, that is, we get it through nature, and some of them are acquired, that is, through nurture. So nature is nothing but heredity, that is, the differences that we acquire genetically, such as race and the sex of the child. For example, you don't have any control over whether the child is African or Indian or European. Therefore, you don't have any control over the race of a child, and you also don't have any control over the sex of the child. And acquired or nurture are the differences because of environment, such as family, socioeconomic status, culture, education, previous knowledge, experience or gender. Now, when it comes to differences because of nurture, there is some degree of control that can be exercised here. For example, if a child is from a very poor socioeconomic status, if the child is moved into a different environment and is given better resources or given better facilities, then some of these differences can be addressed. Therefore, inherited or nature related individual differences, we don't have any control over them. Whereas nurture or acquired differences, there can be some degree of control over them. If you recollect the title of this chapter, it is Individual Differences Among Learners because of language, caste, gender, community, religion, etc. So let us take a quick look at what is this language diversity or linguistic diversity in India all about. Well, in India, we don't have a national language. Right? But when it comes to the central government or central institutions, they typically use Hindi or English for their activities. And these are considered to be the languages of the union. This is done because of pure convenience, because English or Hindi is typically understood by a large majority of people, because otherwise there are 22 different regional languages that are recognized in the constitution. And yes, there is English as well. So which means that almost every state in India might have its own language. Right? So if you look at a typical classroom, there might be children from different states who have different mother tongues. Therefore, you have a lot of linguistic diversity in a typical classroom as well. And since children are supposed to be comfortable in their own mother tongue, it means that there will be different groups of children in the same classroom who might be comfortable in different languages. Therefore, language diversity or linguistic diversity leads to individual differences in the classroom as well. Next, let us look at the religion and caste diversity in India. In India, there are 7 significant religions that are actively practiced. Hinduism accounts for almost 84% of the population, and Zoroastrianism happens to account for a little over 0.13% of the population. In addition, almost 0.43% practice other religions or other belief systems. For example, there might be different tribes who have their own beliefs, customs and traditions which can be considered to be religions by themselves. Right? And when we look at castes, there are over 3,000 castes and over 25,000 subcastes in India. And these are typically related to different types of occupation like lohar or kumhar. So in a classroom, you will find children from different religions, from different castes, and because of the different customs, traditions, beliefs that are practiced because of these different religions and castes, the children who belong to these religions or castes will also have some individual differences. Therefore, religion and caste also lead to individual differences in the classroom. The socioeconomic background of the child is also a very important factor in the individual differences in the classroom, because the economic background of the family that the child comes from can determine what kind of resources the child has access to, what kind of facilities are being provided to the child. And this can be due to the individual occupations that are being followed by that particular family member, or what kind of family wealth that they have. And even if you look at it at a higher level, and if you consider the different states in India, and if you compare the GDP of these different states, on one end you have the relatively poorer states like Bihar, UP, Jharkhand, Meghalaya, and on the other end you have the relatively richer states like Chandigarh, Delhi, Sikkim, Goa, and you can see the kind of difference that is there in the GDP of these different states. So even if you have children from these different states sitting in the same classroom, that can also account for the fact that there is going to be a lot of individual differences just because of their socio-economic background. Now that we have seen the different reasons behind the individual differences of the children in a classroom, the question is that do factors like gender, religion, caste, economic background, do they actually affect education? Well, all you have to do is a simple Google search and you'll come across many reports and many news articles which clearly indicate that yes, all such factors not only affect the kind of educational opportunities that children are getting, they also affect the learning that is happening in the classroom. For example, the community or the caste or the religion that the children come from can affect things like the dropout rate. Therefore, individual differences definitely affect the learning opportunities and the learning that is happening in the classroom. So, what are the educational implications of these individual differences? Well, the one-size-fits-all approach, where you use one standard methodology for teaching all students, that does not work, because you have to consider the fact that children come from different backgrounds and different circumstances, and all of them will not have the same kind of resources or support outside the classroom. And you have to make sure that the syllabus is also not rigid. The syllabus has to factor in that different students are at different learning levels, and the syllabus also has to be flexible. And even the assessment techniques have to be different to account for these individual differences. And if you don't have the proper kind of expectations in the classroom, right? If your expectations are very high, then some children will definitely feel demotivated. For example, if you look at a typical classroom and you map the intelligence quotient of the students in a typical classroom, it will follow a bell curve or a normal curve like this, which means that there will be some students who are below average and some students who are above average. So if the teacher has expectations here, then the below average students will feel demotivated because you are teaching above their level, above their capability, right? So they'll not be able to understand what the teacher is saying, so they feel demotivated. And the above average children will find that what is being taught in the classroom is below their level, So they will feel demotivated because it is not a challenge for them. Therefore, the teacher has to consider that individual differences exist in the classroom. There will be children with different IQ levels, different backgrounds, different circumstances. Therefore, the teacher has to account for all of this in the teaching and learning process. So now that we have confirmed that yes, there are individual differences between the children in a classroom, and these individual differences have to be accounted for in the teaching and learning process, then how can the teacher address these differences? Well, the teacher can either use equality or equity. Now, what is the difference between these two terms? Well, equality means that all the children are given the same kind of resources or opportunities. Right? But equity means that given the fact that children come from different circumstances and different backgrounds, each child is given enough resources or enough opportunities to make sure that all children reach the same outcome, the same result. So let me explain. Equality is resource focused. For example, if you look at this picture, right? Here you are giving the same kind of support or the same kind of resource to all the children. But this doesn't mean that all the children will reach the same result. Right? Because they have individual differences, even though they have the same opportunities, they are not able to reach the same result. Right? Whereas equity is result focused. Now, you know that the result is that all the children will have to be able to reach the fruit. So you will give them as much resources or as many opportunities as they require to be able to reach this result or outcome. So again, based on the individual differences of the children, you are giving them different types of resources or opportunities. So that is the difference between equality and equity. So what is the role of the teachers in addressing these individual differences? Well, I will not go too much in detail into these points. You can just pause the video here and read all of them once. They are based on common sense, such as the first step is to acknowledge and be sensitive to the individual differences among children, because unless you acknowledge and accept that there is a problem, you'll not be able to solve the problem. So that is the first step. And then there are other points like how the curriculum has to be flexible and how there have to be various assessment techniques that are used to account for the differences in the children, and how interventions may be required for children with special needs and also for children with special talents or those who are called gifted children. Right? The main reason why I'm not going too much in detail into all these points is because if you look at the topics in the syllabus, there are other chapters where we will be covering all of these in detail. There are chapters where we will be learning about addressing learners from diverse backgrounds, including disadvantaged and deprived, and we'll also be looking at addressing the needs of children with learning difficulties or impairments, that is children with special needs. And we will also be looking at addressing talented, creative or specially abled learners who are gifted children. Therefore, we will cover all of these in detail in some of the next chapters. So now let's move on to the questions. In this question, we are being asked, as a social science teacher, how would you view the individual differences in your class? Well, the basic point that you have to remember for all questions which are related to this chapter is this: individual differences are to be considered as an opportunity. Right? They are not a hindrance, they are not a problem. Right? So you should always select the answer which talks about these individual differences in a positive way. For example, when we look at all the four options, the first one says this will increase conflict between the teacher and students. So this is a negative statement. And yes, these individual differences may increase conflict, but as a teacher, you have to learn how to address this conflict. Right? Therefore, this cannot be the correct answer. Next, it hinders the learning process. Now again, this is a negative statement. Therefore, we have to eliminate this because these individual differences do not hinder the learning process. They make the learning process a lot more interesting, enriching. Right? Next, it creates challenge for the teacher to involve all the learners. This is also again a seemingly negative statement, while the statement might be correct, because if there are a lot of children with various learning needs and there are a lot of individual differences, then it would be a challenge for the teacher to involve all the learners in the activities in the classroom. But as a teacher, you have to learn how to address this challenge. Just like you are resolving a conflict, you have to address this challenge. Therefore, this also can be eliminated because this statement is also negative. The last statement is positive. It says it provides space to discuss wider perspective in the classroom. Now this is correct because if there are children from different backgrounds in the classroom. For example, if there are children from business background and there are some children from families which are involved in agriculture, and there is a discussion happening in the classroom about agriculture and crops and how food crops are grown, then the children coming from this agricultural background, right, so they can bring in their own experience, their own opinions, their own reality, because they have seen this in real life, right? So they bring a better perspective in the classroom and they can make the discussion a lot more meaningful. Therefore, these individual differences can be an opportunity and not a hindrance. Therefore, the last statement is the correct answer. Having a diverse classroom with children from varied social, economic and cultural background enriches the learning experience of all the students. This statement is what? As we have seen in the previous question, here again, we have to look at all the answer choices and see which one of them are positive and which of them are negative. Now, this statement says that if children are from different economic and cultural backgrounds, it enriches the learning experience. Now, how does it do that? Because when children interact with each other, right, they can learn from each other. Or when children participate in a discussion, they bring their own opinion, bring their own perspective, experiences, then the other children can learn from the experiences of these children from different backgrounds, right? So when you look at all the answer choices, it says correct, because children learn many skills from their peers. So yes, these children from varied social, economic, cultural background, they enrich the learning experiences. This is correct. And children learn from their peers, that they can learn from each other. So this is a positive statement and this is the correct answer. The next three statements, first says that correct because it makes the classroom more hierarchical. No, it is correct, yes, but it does not make the classroom more hierarchical. That is, it does not become that children from a business background are considered to be superior and children from agricultural background will be considered to be inferior. So such hierarchy doesn't build up because children are from different backgrounds, right? So this statement is half incorrect. The correct part is okay, but hierarchical part is wrong. Next, incorrect, because it leads to unnecessary competition. No, if children are from different backgrounds, it does not need to unnecessary competition. So therefore, this can be eliminated. The last one, incorrect, because it can confuse the children and they may feel lost. This again is a negative statement and it's an incorrect statement that can be eliminated. Therefore, option 1 is the correct answer. Why do individuals differ from one another? Well, we have already discussed in this chapter that the individual differences can be because of nature or because of nurture. Nature is what we acquire through heredity, through our genes, and nurture is because of environmental factors such as social factors or family or economic background. Right? Therefore, when we look at all the answer choices, the first one says impact of the environment. So this is talking only about nurture. So this is half correct. Due to inborn characteristics, this is talking only about nature or heredity, right? So this is also half correct. Due to the interplay between heredity and environment, so this is talking both about nature and nurture, right? So this is the best answer because it is talking about both the aspects. And the last one, because each individual has received a different gene set from his or her parents. So again, this one, the last option is talking only about heredity or nurture or nature, sorry. Therefore, the last one is also incorrect. Therefore, only one option, that is option 3 is correct because individual differences are caused because of heredity and environment. The individual differences of the students in a classroom are what? Again, as we have discussed in the previous questions, individual differences should be considered in a positive manner as an opportunity, and any of the options which talks about individual differences in a negative way can be directly eliminated. So that's the shortcut for answering any questions from this chapter. Now, individual differences are disadvantageous as teachers need to control a diverse classroom. So here we are talking about disadvantage, right? So this is a negative statement. So eliminate. Next, detrimental as they lead to student-student conflicts. Now again, this is talking about individual differences in a negative way, that they are detrimental. Therefore, this also can be eliminated. Inexpedient as they reduce the speed of the curriculum transaction to the level of the slowest student. Now here again, individual differences are being looked at in a negative way because they say that these differences can slow down the curriculum or slow down the pace of the classroom to the slowest student. Now this again is talking about this in a negative manner, so this also can be eliminated. The last one says advantageous as they lead teacher to explore a wider pool of cognitive structures. This is correct because these individual differences can give the opportunity to the teacher to try different types of teaching methodologies and different cognitive structures. Therefore, the last statement, which talks about individual differences in a positive way as an opportunity, this is the correct answer and the best answer. Variations in acquisition of manual skills are usually due to variations in what? Now, manual skills or physical skills, right? So, children learn physical skills or manual skills at different rates. So, why can this be? Because it might be because of psychomotor speeds. It might be because of the ability or the quickness in which they can understand the procedures that you are trying to teach them. And it can also be because of general intelligence. So which means that all of these three can be the reason why there is a variation in acquisition or learning of manual skills. Therefore, the last option, that is all of the above, is the correct answer here. And with that, we come to the end of this video. If you have any questions or feedback, please put them below in the comment section. And the rest, you know what to do. So I will see you again in the next part of this video series where we will cover one more chapter from the syllabus. So till then, take care, stay safe.